Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is October 30th. On this day in 1975 in Greenwich, Connecticut, it was the night before Halloween, also known as Mischief Night. 15-year-old Martha Moxley spent the evening the way plenty of teens did back then, walking the neighborhood with friends, tossing a bit of toilet paper, maybe a few eggs. It was innocent suburban fun in the safe, tree-lined enclave of Belle Haven. But by the next morning, that sense of safety was shattered when Martha's body was found underneath a pine tree in her own backyard. She had been bludgeoned and stabbed with a golf club that had come from a neighbor's house across the street. Her murder would become one of the most haunting and hotly debated crimes in modern American history. Today, we're talking about the murder of Martha Moxley, a case that would span decades, pull in a famous family name, and test just how far the justice system could bend under the weight of time, privilege, and persistence. Let's get started. October 30th, 1975 was Mischief Night in the quiet, wealthy community of Belle Haven, Connecticut. 15-year-old Martha Moxley had gone out with neighborhood friends just as they did every year. They roamed the cul-de-sacs, played lighthearted pranks, and ended up, as they often did, at the Skakel house across the street. Two of the Skakel boys, 17-year-old Thomas and 15-year-old Michael, were part of the same social circle. They were cousins of the Kennedys, which gave the family an air of attention and wealth, even in a town that was already full of both. The last confirmed sighting of Martha came around 9:30 p.m. Multiple witnesses and later police timelines agree that she was in or near the Skakel backyard talking with Tommy. He told investigators later that she left soon after. But somewhere between that last conversation and the next morning, something went horribly wrong. The next day was Halloween. The neighborhood woke up to the usual quiet. Kids were planning their costumes while their parents drank coffee and read the paper. But Martha hadn't come home. Her mother, Dorothy Moxley, assumed that she'd fallen asleep at a friend's house. But when morning turned to noon and no one had seen her, her worry turned to panic. A friend, Sheila McGuire, joined the search. Just before noon, she spotted something near a pine tree in the Moxleys' backyard. What she found would stay with her for the rest of her life. Martha was lying face down, partly hidden by the branches. Her jeans and underwear were pulled down, and her shirt was bloodstained. She had been bludgeoned and stabbed with a now broken Tony Penna 6-iron. Police quickly matched the remaining pieces to a set from the Skakel property across the street. At the scene, detectives marked a trail of blood starting near the Moxley driveway, leading to the tree where she was found. They documented drag marks, broken glass, and the shattered remains of the club. An autopsy would later confirm that she died from massive blunt force trauma. The broken shaft, investigators said, had been used to stab her. There was no evidence of sexual assault, but the violence told its own story. Greenwich police thought that they were dealing with a teenage altercation that had gone too far. The clues pointed close to home. Officers canvassed Belle Haven, interviewing friends, family, and neighbors. They searched the Skakel property with consent from the boy's father, Rushton Skakel, and collected a 4-iron to compare with the murder weapon. Tommy Skakel was questioned early and often. After all, he was the last to have seen Martha alive, and his story had small inconsistencies. But in 1976, a retired Greenwich police captain later testified prosecutors declined to issue a warrant, saying that there just wasn't enough probable cause. Attention also turned to Kenneth Littleton, the family's new live-in tutor who had just moved into the house the night before the murder. He was questioned repeatedly in the years that followed, but was never charged. Despite hundreds of interviews, the case stalled. By the end of the 70s, it went cold, and for 25 years, it would stay that way. But then in 1998, something rare happened. A Connecticut judge, George Thiem, was appointed as a one-judge grand jury to re-examine the cold case. It was a move that gave prosecutors subpoena power to dig deeper into the tangled web of old evidence and long-held secrets. After 18 months, the grand jury found probable cause to arrest Michael Skakel, who was then 39 years old. He was the younger brother who had been 15 at the time of the crime. On January 19, 2000, Michael surrendered to Greenwich police. Because he was a juvenile in 1975, the case began in juvenile court. But in early 2001, a judge ruled that it should proceed in adult court. The trial opened in May 2002, and the world's media descended on Norwalk, Connecticut. Prosecutors said that Michael had made incriminating statements years earlier at a reform school called Elon. Witnesses claimed that he'd boasted, quote, "I'm going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy," end quote. Others said that he had privately admitted being near Martha's house that night. Prosecutors argued that his shifting stories revealed his guilt. The defense called the witnesses unreliable, pointing to drug use, their fading memories, and motives for attention. Still, after 5 weeks of testimony and 3 days of deliberation, the jury convicted Michael Skakel of murder. In August 2002, he was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. For the Moxley family, it was the first semblance of justice in more than a quarter century. But the story didn't end there. In 2013, a Connecticut judge granted Skakel a new trial, ruling that his lawyer had been ineffective. He was released on bond after 11 years in prison. 3 years later, the Connecticut Supreme Court reinstated the conviction. Then, in 2018, with a newly seated bench, the same court reversed itself again, vacating the conviction and ordering a new trial. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene. Finally, on October 30th, 2020, 45 years to the day after Martha's death, Connecticut prosecutors announced they would not retry the case. Michael Skakel was legally free. Through it all, Dorothy Moxley, Martha's mother, attended every hearing, every retrial, and every appeal. She never stopped speaking her daughter's name. When she passed away in 2024 at the age of 92, she was remembered for her grace, strength, and her refusal to give up. October 30th, 1975 began with laughter and harmless pranks under the streetlights. It ended with sirens, police tape, and a life that was taken far too soon. Today, 50 years later, no one stands convicted for the murder of Martha Moxley. Martha was 15. She loved horseback riding, art, and her friends. And on a night meant for mischief, she became the center of one of America's most enduring mysteries. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Martha's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join us again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!